Welcome to CanCham Hong Kong and HKCBA's 9th Annual Transpacific Entrepreneurial Conference. This is Session 7, Connecting Talent Footprints Between Canada and Hong Kong. For those of you who are listening online, if you would like to submit questions or comments via the chat box, please feel free to do so. We will do our best to answer all of your questions now or after the conference. So to kick this off, I'd like for each one of the panelists to introduce themselves. My name is Christopher Chen. I'm the head of Invest HK Canada, and I'd like to start this off by letting Ralph Chammah introduce himself briefly.
Thank you, Chris, and a pleasure to be part of the panel to share a bit more about my experience in Hong Kong. My name is Ralph Chammah. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a cybersecurity software company out of Hong Kong, and made my way to Hong Kong back in 2019. And since then explored a lot of aspects from the personal side of Hong Kong, but also from a business perspective that we're going to be sharing a bit more during this conference.
Thanks, Ralph. Next up, I'd like to introduce Paulina Kociolek. I'm hoping I pronounced your surname correctly.
That's right. Thank you, Chris. And it's wonderful to be part of this panel as well. So my name is Paulina Kociolek, and I'm an international school teacher teaching math and science here at Hong Kong International School. I've been an international teacher for the last 7 years in South Korea, mainland China, now Hong Kong. And previously I was working in Ontario, where I'm born and raised. And I am just excited to be here and being part of this panel today.
Thank you, Paulina. Next up, I'd like to introduce Jacklyn. Jan?
Thanks, Chris. And yes, really grateful to be a part of this and amongst all these great speakers. I'm Jacklyn Chen. I am an associate at Goldman Sachs, working in government affairs. I am a Canadian graduate, having studied in Montreal and now back in Hong Kong, my hometown, working here for 2.5 years now. And I've been loving it since.
Thank you, Jacklyn. And lastly, I'd like to introduce Catherine Chan.
Hi, everyone. My name is Catherine Chen. I'm the founder and CEO of AvantFaire Investment Management Group, which is an asset manager licensed in Hong Kong. I came from Toronto, and I was studying at the Goldman Business School. So I'm very happy to come here and share my experiences of working in Hong Kong from Canada.
That's great. So with that, I've introduced all 4 of you. I'd like to ask this question broadly to the field. What attracted each one of you to move from Canada and work in Hong Kong? I mean, some of you have worked in Canada, some of you just went to school, but you chose Hong Kong. What brought you to the Special Administrative Region? And that's for any one of you.
I would like to say, sorry. If I was to summarize it in one word, for me, it was stability. And coming from living in Ontario, where especially as an educator, the substitute list, long-term occasional teaching list could be for years on end with no kind of permanent position in sight. So finding a location where there is more stability, where you have that permanent contract with really equal pay and a lot of opportunities for just branching out, networking, the diversity here as well with the multicultural and kind of inviting atmosphere is really what attracted me. And specifically just the school that I'm at, it's been on my radar for at least since 2013, that I'm just happy to see that it offers still what I felt that it would offer with its values, core values, and the way that it runs its education system. So overall, though, I'd say it's the stability that it brings me.
I was gonna, from my end, it was the excitement. So before moving to Hong Kong, I've never been to Asia, so it was a one-way ticket to Hong Kong to discover what Asia has in store. And one thing was, originally I was with Deloitte back in Canada and transferred to Deloitte Hong Kong. And the first thing I did is Google Hong Kong, and it comes up as one of the top cities in the world. And that's what, for me, was the exciting part. And then once I landed, discovering it every day, up until today, starting my 5th year, and still discovering new things that always reminds me there's more to do it, more to it, and discovering exciting stuff in Hong Kong, actually.
Yeah, oh, go ahead.
Sorry. So my experience rather similar to Paulina. So I was working in the banking industry in Canada. And what I find that is very interesting in Hong Kong is really from one side, Hong Kong has a really stringent regulation in the financial industry that is one of the best ground for a startup company like us in asset management. And then secondly, it is also very diversified and it opens up a lot of new opportunities for new form of businesses because we're in the green and sustainability industry and we need a lot of the vibes like the startups as well as the way that is, the community is opening up for us for new ideas and receiving those new opportunities as well. So this is a really amazing place if you think about it.
Yes, for sure. I think, just to echo Ralph's point on the excitement, I think as a young professional, with under 5 years of experience, what's really interesting or really great about Hong Kong is I think the exposure and experience you can get as a young professional. I think coming here, what Hong Kong has is its kind of geographical location, like in Asia. It's in the middle of everything. It's close to China. I think naturally, if you want to be a part of that growth here, and I think, we can't deny that there's a lot happening in this region that I think for businesses to grow here, I think that's something that all of us at a younger, start of our career wants to be a part of and exposed to. So, I really did see this, having even though studied in Canada and, having some of my roots in North America, I really felt like, this was my chance to kind of be back here and, really take it all in. And, in the end, it's really where I feel like there are a lot of opportunities afforded to people like us, to, people who want to step up and try new things and, take on new opportunities. So I think that's really a great thing about, Hong Kong is that there's so much opportunity to do that. So yeah, I think it's been great.
And it's quite an interesting point to bring up because it was something I was thinking about. Coming at an early stage of your career versus coming at a later stage, the experience is completely different. When you start your career, Hong Kong is a special place to grow. But if you want to also get to a point where, okay, what's next in your career, that also is available in Hong Kong. So someone that's thinking of, oh, should I do it now at the early stage of my career or at a later? There's two angles, and it really depends at what are the opportunities available. And my honest opinion is just go for it, experience it, and then worst case, it's change countries again. But Hong Kong has that availability and can offer a lot at an early stage, just like at a later stage in someone's career.
Good to hear. It's good to hear. Actually, you've brought up a very interesting point about the actual transition from Canada to Hong Kong. And I'd like to focus on the intimidation factor because, uprooting yourself from one country to another is not the smallest move one can do in their life, admittedly. So I'd like to ask all of you, and if you would like to answer within the the same order that you replied in, how was the journey over? Was the journey smooth? When you made the move, and there may have been different countries. It may have been a transfer. Please tell us. Was the journey smooth when you came? I mean, also, was it during the pandemic?
So in my case specifically, I had the transfer with Deloitte in terms of the initial logistic that was obviously through corporate, so it was smoother. But one thing, so I came in 2019 Jan, first 6 months, it's the lovey-dovey that everyone talks about, the happening Hong Kong, and then protests started. And as much as it wasn't as impactful on a day-to-day personally and going through that. So it didn't make me question, am I doing the right move or anything like that? On the contrary, it was something that could happen anywhere in the world. And it was just a question of being part of the entire experience, I would say. And in terms of expectations or anything like that, my recommendation and the mindset I had is, I'm coming to Asia, I'm coming to Hong Kong, I'm not bringing any standards of living or not anything, I'm just going and blending in. And that's the only way you could enjoy and accelerate your integration into the city. Because it's a question of defining your lifestyle and your day-to-day. And if you come with the standards of living or anything that's from a North American mindset, it's not going to work necessarily. So for me, it was a question of embracing the culture, doing the local stuff, and really understanding the local mindset, which helped me accelerate through my career, but also the entire integration into Hong Kong.
And for my kind of transition into Hong Kong, had a few more kind of bumps along the road, as I actually, before being in Hong Kong, was in mainland China, mostly in Shenzhen and Huizhou, teaching at an international school there. And luckily for me, I had applied to the school back in November of I believe 2019. So I had this job already ready for me for 2020. But then during Chinese New Year, while we're on vacation, that's kind of when COVID outbreaks began, and coming back into Hong Kong to be able to transition back into the mainland China, I got blocked. I wasn't able to cross the border. I had to stay in Hong Kong. So I wasn't able to, pack up my old place or say goodbye to any of my old students. I had to teach virtually online for about 4 months while I was kind of living in a hotel in between the transition from my previous school to this current school. And so, being new to Hong Kong, though not new to living in Asia, you don't know anybody. And the instant that I arrived, I found how welcoming and friendly everybody was. Anyone that I had reached out to for assistance, they were more than happy to help out. Even the school, though, they weren't, I wasn't contractually beginning at their school, they were still helping me out with finding some kind of housing and whatnot ahead of time. And then once the actual summer completed and then everything kind of closed off with the previous school, I was able to transfer out all my funds from China to Canada, so that then it can be transferred from Canada to here and kind of start my living process. But the school that I work at HKS, they helped me with everything from the work visa, the Hong Kong ID, the bank accounts, getting a phone number, my teaching certificate, the housing, even tax setup. Everything was so easy, or at least they made it so easy for me to transition into my role here. So I've been very fortunate and thankful for their assistance. But yeah, so overall, though it was a bit of a bumpy start, I wouldn't change anything about it, and I still love being here and living here.
Great. I have a question for all four of you, and this is purely subjective. It is based on the fact that Hong Kong has the largest Canadian diaspora outside of Canada. Why do you think Canadians do so well in Hong Kong? And I can see that the people from Kancham are probably nodding their heads silently. But I like to ask the four of you, why do you suppose that Canadians do so well in Hong Kong, or actually overseas in general?
Maybe if I could go ahead first and just share that I think Canada itself, like having studied there, Montreal, it's a very international city. It's very diverse. So I feel like part of that, taking that diversity there and then coming into a place like Hong Kong, in Asia, overseas, I think in general, I think it's easier to be successful given, you're around a new environment, but, you're more resilient that way. But, even in Hong Kong, I think what I like the most is, connecting with people who are from Canada. And we talk about how, we've left the cold weather, but we're still complaining about the weather here in Hong Kong when it's the winter and it's 5 degrees and we're still freezing in our apartments. But you know, it's been great. And you know, even in my company alone, and meeting more senior managers, MDs who are, you know, from McGill or from Canada, we do have a connection there. And you know, that's something that is really valued, I think, in the workplace, and you know, even outside socially, where you know, meeting people you know, from your alma mater, and you know, people who've shared an experience with you. I think it's definitely easier to connect that way, and Hong Kong is really a place to do that, because you do just meet so many people from, you know, various backgrounds.
So maybe I'll share also a little bit of my personal experiences. So I stayed in for a very long time, and I was not born in Hong Kong. So I was also a newbie in Hong Kong back in 2017. But what I find is that throughout the time when I was in Canada, I really had a good mindset about, you know, taking a positive angle and perspective in looking into a new society, because one of the common things that Canada and Hong Kong really shares is the diversity and the opening up of conversation and mindset. So really for me, it's really a process of they're very open for understanding you without a label in Hong Kong, and I was very ready to share my ideas of my businesses for startup. And then they were also very ready to actually assist you in terms of anything really, like from setting up the company to applying the license, or to talk to any industry professionals. So I think the experiences is rather smooth in terms of the understanding and the mindset, because we share a lot of things in common. And I think, well, because Hong Kong is a very competitive place, but you know, the lifestyle in Canada is rather good as well. But the way that making Canadians so competitive in Hong Kong is really because of the mindset and the ready to share kind of actions that we are taking.
Great. Ralph, Paulina, any thoughts?
Actually,
very subjective.
Both Jacklyn and Catherine pointed out the right things, and for me, getting involved with all the Canadian community and all that came to at the end of my first year, and honestly, I didn't realize that there are that many Canadians in Hong Kong, and that's when you start getting involved, and next thing you know, this person's connecting you with that person and all that, and you quickly expand. And as much as there's that first conversation, whether it's talking about the cold or talking about food or whatever it is, that connects it. And it's a question of what do you want to get out of it? Is it a question of let's leverage this network to grow from a business perspective, or I just want to feel a bit the home of Canada in Hong Kong? So it really depends, and that's where I truly believe the Canadian Chamber allows that, and I think it's the number of members is growing, so it shows that there's more and more Canadians that want to connect as well and grow together across Hong Kong.
Absolutely. And in my field, I feel that a lot of the teachers and educators that I work with feel like either Hong Kong is an extension of Canada, Canada extension of Hong Kong, in the way that, you know, large community, and they just feel that there's a lot of similarities between living in Hong Kong, living in Canada, with like what everyone else was talking about, with the diversity and the stability, and you know, they treat us well financially as well in the various departments that we have. And overall, we see a lot of students studying in Canada and then coming back here to Hong Kong, and it kind of just, you know, they go back and forth because they kind of feel like both places are their home. And so we see a lot of kind of communities kind of building where they are making both places their home, if that makes sense. And it's just because of the good relationships that we have built, and the networking that is available here between all, not just Canadians, but kind of all diverse backgrounds, that, yeah, just makes it a very welcoming place to be.
Yeah, it's certainly true. I have to state at this stage that the relations between Canada and Hong Kong, as far as Asian countries or Asian jurisdictions are concerned, is actually amongst the strongest in the world. If you look at the flight traffic at its height between Hong Kong and Canada, Air Canada and Cathay Pacific were running several flights a day to Hong Kong, back and forth. Just to put it in comparison, Singapore Airlines has just decided to cancel its 2 flights a week from between Vancouver and Singapore because of lack of people. So that that actually, you put that in comparison, the relationship between Canada and Hong Kong is incomparable. So based on what has happened over the last several years, what you've experienced, what tips can you offer fellow Canadians in scoring a suitable job in Hong Kong? What do you think would be the best way to go about it? Respecting that you're all in somewhat different industries.
Maybe I'll kick that off with how you could land a job. So it depends also at what stage in your career you're coming in at. But if you're in the world of corporates, definitely leverage that. And I'm sure the majority of corporations have footprint in Hong Kong. So that's one approach that try to do a transfer, whether it's through a secondment approach or an actual permanent transfer. That's one thing. Another a bit more risky but also an exciting way to come to Hong Kong is a pivoting point in your career where it's a question of all of a sudden you want to do something else, whether it's changing industry, fields, sectors, whatever it is, and getting into whether it's cybersecurity, tech, or even completely something different. I think there's a lot of opportunities in Hong Kong, and again now with all the opening and all that, a lot of organizations are growing their team. So it could be an opportunity to come and because there's experience that people take for granted coming from a North American mindset that can be valuable for Asia and the Asian market. And it's a question of just leveraging that and pivoting your thinking process to basically bring and contribute to companies in Hong Kong. So in terms of doing the jump, the move, just think of what direction you want to go, and then the opportunities between, I'm sure there's a lot of government support that help these transition, or else through corporate world as well that you could transition.
And through the educational field, the most successful way of landing jobs here in Hong Kong would be joining different online platforms such as Search Associates, International School Services, Schroll, and as the main international schools use these platforms to kind of seek potential candidates. Schools will also typically post their openings on their websites, and then of course they do various job fairs worldwide. I know that they do several job fairs in Toronto and Ottawa, and essentially just looking at the schools that align with your values and kind of catering your search towards those. But definitely applying for those kind of positions earlier in the year, at least for us, October, November onwards for the following school year is usually suggested. So kind of looking ahead, not looking last minute. Those jobs can definitely come up last minute, but overall, those would be my main kind of key points of where you could start if you are interested in the educational fields.
And Jacklyn and Catherine, for the financial sector, any tips or suggestions?
I mean, I think number one is also just for people overseas to be open to the idea of working in Asia and really stepping up to express that and show that, because I think oftentimes there's a lot of mindset around the difficulty of coming over. Oh, like I might not have the right skill set, I might not have the right experience to work in this region. But I think oftentimes the reverse is that we are often looking for people who do have that overseas experience, professionals who can come over here and also help the local community, local businesses, global businesses work with, our headquarters back in North America, and, just have those communication skills. I think that's actually quite valued. And even maybe I think in the financial sector, I think having that diversity of like experience is really important. And I would probably echo Ralph in that, saying that mobility, internally, like through your organizations, is probably the best way to try that. And I think there's a lot more opportunity now probably to, step up to say, hey, I want to, try a position in Asia. And, I think that's something that would work for me and also our organization to do that. And I think oftentimes people would probably be receptive to that idea, and not as hard as we think. So, I think, and, following the COVID pandemic and the opening up, I do think slowly there will be even more opportunities to do that.
I just noted today, sorry, I just have to say that in terms of opportunities, Standard Chartered just opened up 300 positions today in the news. So that's a step. Sorry, Catherine, cut you off there.
Actually, just echo what Chris, you have just mentioned, right? Because my experiences has been a little bit different than everyone else here, because I started up my own asset management firm here in Hong Kong. So I would always think about this as a ideation and creation process and the strategic thinking process behind the scene. So firstly, to think about, like what kind of value add you can provide to the society and what kind of skill sets do you have. And then secondly, to think what you can really create in this world. And I think this is pretty important. So my experiences was very interesting in terms of this, is because when you start up a company, it's the best way to do it is to practice and prototype and then pivot. So there are a lot of chances in Hong Kong that you can share your ideation with people around you. No matter if you know them or not, they're very ready to listen to you and to think about it from your standing point. And then you can actually pivot quite quickly. And there are a lot of talents out there available for you to partner with as well. So I think this is also important, like the value of friendship and the value of partnerships, like in the industry. And there are a lot of people just really ready to help and share. And I think this is the best support that Hong Kong can give. And in terms of other supports like Invest Hong Kong, I think they provided us a lot of help when we firstly established the company. Like we have a very smooth transition because of all this industry and market assistance from all different people. So I think this is very important that you open it up and then you just ask for help.
Thank you, everybody. I'd like to mention that there's actually a number of initiatives being run by the Hong Kong government in conjunction with Canadian Chamber, as well as other associations found within Asia Pacific, to help migrate Canadian employees, Canadian labor into Hong Kong. One is the Top Talent Pass scheme, and this is not unique to Hong Kong. I believe that the UK is running something similar, where degree graduates of the top universities of a certain country are basically allowed to are given a residency, a form of residency up to 24 months without actually scoring a job. So in other words, if you have actually one of these, have a degree from, I believe it's McGill, McMaster, University of Alberta, UBC, University of Montreal, and University of Toronto, you can come in, show your degree, I guess, and you're granted 24 hours, sorry, that'd be terrible, 24 months residency in Hong Kong to find a job, hoping that you have suitable experience. The other one is with the working visa holiday scheme. Now, the working visa is obviously that's been I think the country that's most associated with that has actually always been Australia. But basically, what this is that if you're between the 18 to 30-year-old, and I think some of you fall within that category, you're allowed to take up short-term employment, enrollment in a short-stay training course while you're on holiday in Hong Kong. Traditionally, if you're on a visitor visa, you can't do anything. But basically, with a working visa holiday, with a working visa holiday scheme, you're allowed to take up short-term employment. So one of the things I'd like to also ask you is that what based on the previous question, of what tips do you have for potential employees? What advice or suggestion would you give to those who have actually never even been to Hong Kong? For those who've never visited Hong Kong, what would you recommend? All of you know people like that, so, and I'm sure you've tried to entice your friends or family to visit you.
It's perfect example because when I moved to Hong Kong, I didn't know anything about. I've never traveled to Asia before coming, so that's the perfect segue into this. And how do you entice, or the typical weather, obviously, but other than that, there's a lot to do in Hong Kong, and that was also one of the thing where, whether it's family or even friends, when I decided to leave, and they're like, oh, I hope you're gonna come back often and visit. I was like, now it's an opportunity to actually go and visit and discover Asia. And now that you know, and by now I consider myself local, but still a newbie in Hong Kong. But it's a question of, now you have the opportunity to come to Hong Kong and actually discover the rest of Asia. And traveling from here is very easy. But even if you just come to Hong Kong, one thing that I appreciate, and I think a lot of people take the city for granted, between being in the center and the action, whether it's the nightlife, you could go from a Michelin restaurant to sitting on the street on a small stool and enjoying great food, to going to the beach or hiking, and next thing you know, you're in the middle of nowhere and enjoying beautiful views and sightseeing. So it's a question of not looking at Hong Kong as just a financial hub and people just go. There is that, which I truly appreciate, but there's also the network of people that are continuously innovating, and the startups or even big companies. Hong Kong, personally, I think is a incubator and a great place for tech startups. And it's a question that what you want to come and experience, and Hong Kong gives you a flavor of Asia, while keeping a bit of that action as well, for any tourists or people that actually want to move to Hong Kong.
And I have to echo a lot of what Ralph had just said. It really is a one-stop shop for recreation, on whether it's beaches, those mountains, city life, and it really supports an active lifestyle and exercise with, the variety of gyms that they have, the sports teams, different running groups that you see all the time. Especially with the warmer climate, you're able to do a lot more of those indoor and outdoor activities all year round. And the ease of transportation too. I mean, just even within Hong Kong, it's so convenient to catch a cab or a tram or the metro or the bus, walking, a lot of these things, you think that, oh, I'd have to travel so far to get to a beach or to a mountain, but it's so close. And, and I think a lot of people might think that, oh, when they think Hong Kong, it's just this big city, kind of like New York. But, that only makes up a small percentage of the lush green environment that we have. Just right now, my school is on a bay. And right now, as I'm talking to you all, my eyes behind the screen, I'm looking at water and boats and beautiful mountains. And, it's things like that makes me feel like I'm constantly surrounded by nature, that kind of keeps me here as well, is that I don't need to go too far to have those experiences. And like the cuisine as well, you can try a new restaurant every day and you will still never try every single restaurant. And it's all kind of that melting pot of just like what Ralph was saying, right? You've got those high-end Michelin star restaurants, and then you've got those, kind of little carts set up with street meat and vendors and whatnot, but it's all just so delicious. And then it really bodes well for providing kind of a very welcoming community vibe, down the streets, those various streets, on the weekend, the nightlife and whatnot, like anybody can come out and, just have a drink on the streets, and you don't have to be from any kind of social class or whatnot. It just all feels very, very welcoming and mixed. So yes, that's kind of my reasons for.
I just have to add that there's pros and cons to having a view. So I likewise, I have a view on the marina, and there's pros and cons to it during the day, where you're seeing all these lovely yachts and the water and the weather is nice, and then you're stuck in the office. But that also gives me motivation, like, okay, what do I need to do to be out there and being on a yacht eventually and just growing. So it could be a push from a career perspective as well, where it's like, okay, there's a lot to do, and how do you get there? So this is just a side note.
There's definitely a convenience aspect to all of it, I think, is the convenience of living here in a way, and also the convenience of finding a community. You know, Hong Kong is so dense and a very social place. So I think it's when you are able to step out and reach out to people, I think easily, especially for newcomers, it's so easy to, you know, find your own community, whether it's like professionally or you know, through the chambers or through, you know, friends of friends, through teams. I think people are always very welcoming of new people. And then also in terms of living, you know, being from here, it's having the convenience of just how easy it is to get around. And if you're able to live on the island, as those who work here, a lot of people who do, it is really just so convenient to have everything accessible to you, while also still being able to, you know, spend 30 minutes out and you're on an island somewhere, or you're in the mountains to get away from it all. I think that's very unique to Hong Kong and maybe some other cities in Asia, but it is really a great thing that I always, you know, tell people, you know, they have to come and see it for themselves.
So maybe because everyone said a lot about the Hong Kong life and everything, and I totally agree with everyone. So maybe I say something at a high level. So I think really it's a definition of happiness and success, right? So we all have different definitions, and in Hong Kong, the definition of success and happiness are very diverse, which means that you decide how you want to be happier, and which is very important for life, because I think life is all about experiences. And there are a lot of different ways to get those different and diverse experiences. Like I have friends who are like a farmer who's living in the southern side of the earth for half a year, and the northern side of the earth, like in Canada, for another half of the year. This is also a lifestyle. I mean, there are a lot of like different ways that we can live, not just working in a bank and do your daily job and then going back to home. There are just so many opportunities for you to get experiences of somebody else's life or a different kind of life in Hong Kong. And I had very great experiences in that, and I always hop in on and off from a flight to somewhere that's really different, and people have very different culture and mindset as well. So which makes my how should I put it, make my startup and founder or as a CEO kind of life very interesting as compared to the rest of the CEOs. Which I feel that this is one of the things that, you know, like you have to come to Hong Kong and experience. So welcome to Hong Kong.
Great. We have very limited time left. So I think I'm just going to have one more question for all of you. And this is a tough one. It's going to be a difficult one. If there was one thing, you're allowed to say one thing that you like about Hong Kong and one thing only, what is it? And by the way, feel free to talk about if it's the low tax, it's the low tax, or the no sales tax, but the low income tax was one of mine. But you know, one thing, and even if it's like the name of your favorite restaurant, but what is that one thing that you like about Hong Kong?
Can I say first, because it's just so it's very dog friendly. Because I have
dog friendly.
Yes, I have a golden retriever and I love her a lot. And Hong Kong is really dog friendly. And one of the reasons why I moved to Hong Kong instead of going back to my hometown or anywhere else is really because of my beloved dog. And I think this is just very important. She's a part of the family, and she's able to go to a lot of the dog parks, meeting a lot of the dog friends, and having a lot of great foods from the dog's point of view, from Japan, from Korea, from North America and from China as well. And I think this is adding a very colorful standpoint of life about me and my whole family, actually. And because of the really attracting my parents coming over from Vancouver to Hong Kong more often as well.
There is a direct flight, yes.
Yeah.
Anybody else? What's that one thing?
Go ahead, sorry.
I would say, Chris, you mentioned it, but you know, I think it's the ability to make money, but also save, and you can live any kind of quality of life you can have. You can only eat at Michelin restaurants, but you can also get by with, you know, not spending a lot every day. And it is in a way a high cost city, but there's many ways in which you can get by and still have, you know, a great time here. So that's definitely a big one for me.
I'd have to say, it's hard to sum it up, but if I was to use one word, it just feels like home. I don't feel like I am, you know, I've moved here and I'm just this expat and then I'm going to move out. I just do feel like more so like the local, that, you know, this city provides everything that I would look for to feel like I can build roots and to stay here, not just for, you know, a year or two, but for the long haul. And majority of the people that I work for or work with have lived here for 10, 15, 20 years. You know, it really does, the city really makes it easy to feel like home.
In this case, I'm glad I went last, because you all pointed out the things that I wanted, and I want to just on top of that add fast-paced city, and the fact that it's diverse. It is an exciting city to be in, to live in, and everyone shared exactly different aspects of Hong Kong that you could be living in terms of lifestyle and all that. But the fact that it's an exciting and diverse city, that makes it quite unique.
Great. I'd like to thank everybody. I want to mention for our audience that there is a brand new initiative, brand spanking new. In other words, it's literally just weeks, if not days old, a new partnership initiative between InvestHK, the Hong Kong Economic Trade Office of Toronto, and the Canadian Chamber of Hong Kong, called the Hong Kong Canada Talent Metaverse. It is a, as you know, Web3 and the metaverse is really big and trending within the worlds of IT and fintech right now. InvestHK, HKTO, and CanCham are offering an online platform, an interactive virtual event platform, where employers can showcase company information and potential job posting for Canada's top university students and professionals anytime, anywhere. I will provide the links later, but I think Ralph, you're one of the companies that took part in the beta, and now it's going to be launching live very soon, if not today. It is complimentary for all Hong Kong company employers with a Canadian connection seeking global talents. So I'd like to thank everyone. We really appreciate your time, whether you're here in person or online. If you'd like to connect with myself or with Ralph, Pauline, Jacklyn, or Catherine, please feel free to look us up on LinkedIn or on the Canadian Chamber of Hong Kong event page. We've had a great lineup of conversations upcoming, so please stay tuned and enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.